September 19, 1356. Dawn breaks cold and grey over the fields of Noyers-Maupertuis, 5 miles south of Poitiers. Fog clings to the marshland like a funeral shroud, muffling the sounds of 16,000 men preparing to kill. Through the mist, the silhouettes of French banners rise, crimson and gold bearing the lilies of the Valois, a forest of silk and steel stretching across the western horizon. Before them, on a low ridge protected by hedgerows and tangled vines, 7,000 souls wait in silence. The English archers test their bowstrings. The sound cuts through the morning like the whisper of death, a rhythmic snap repeated down the line, echoing across the valley. Each man knows the odds. Each man has seen what comes next. Behind them, the forest of Noyers stands dark and impenetrable. Before them, a hawthorn hedge punctured by 2 narrow gaps, barely wide enough for 4 riders abreast. On their flanks, marsh to the left, where streams meet in treacherous ground, wagons chained together on the right, a makeshift fortress of oak and iron. And in the center of it all, mounted on a warhorse whose breath steams in the autumn air, sits Edward of Woodstock, 26 years old, heir to the English throne, already a legend forged at Crécy. They call him the Black Prince for the color of his armor, or perhaps for the darkness he brings to his enemies. His eyes scan the French lines. He does not flinch. He does not speak. Across the field, King John II of France, John the Good they name him, raises his hand. Thousands of knights shift in their saddles. The earth trembles beneath hooves and boots. This is no skirmish. This is the collision of empires. This is the moment when a king will fall, when the greatest army in Christendom will break against a hedge and a handful of archers, when history will turn on the edge of English steel and the fury of French pride. The fog begins to lift, the sun climbs higher, and in that terrible silence before the storm, both armies know only one side will leave this field with honor intact. The 100 Years' War had already burned through 2 decades when the armies met at Poitiers. It began in 1337, when Edward III of England laid claim to the French crown, a claim forged in bloodlines and ambition, sealed in the humiliation of French defeats at Sluys and Crécy. But war is expensive, and plague had emptied both treasuries and towns. The Black Death swept through Europe in the late 1340s, killing perhaps 1/3 of all souls, leaving fields untended and armies unmanned. For years, an uneasy truce held. Neither kingdom could afford total war. Neither would accept permanent peace. By 1355, the truce had fractured. France, under King John II, was a kingdom in crisis. The royal coffers were empty. Nobles refused to pay taxes. Regions rebelled. The king's own cousin, Charles of Navarre, treacherous, ambitious, conspired openly against the crown. In April 1356, John arrested Charles and executed 4 of his supporters without trial. It was a desperate act by a desperate king. Normandy erupted. Nobles who escaped arrest turned to England for aid. Edward III of England sensed opportunity. He diverted expeditions, raised armies, and sent his son, the Black Prince, on a chevauchée through southern France. The strategy was brutal and effective. Ride deep into enemy territory, burn crops, destroy villages, shatter the economic backbone of the French crown, force them to fight, humiliate them if they won't. The Black Prince had perfected this tactic the previous year, riding from Bordeaux to Narbonne and back, leaving devastation in his wake. Now, in August 1356, he set out again with 6,000 English and Gascon troops, moving northeast toward the Loire, pillaging as he went. King John responded with overwhelming force. He assembled perhaps 15,000 men, knights, men-at-arms, crossbowmen, German and Scottish mercenaries, and marched south to intercept the raiders. The French outnumbered the English more than 2 to 1. They had the advantage of position, supplies, and momentum. The Black Prince, burdened by slow-moving baggage trains laden with plunder, found himself cut off from reinforcements. His father's promised army never arrived. Aragonese galleys controlled the channel, sowing panic in England. By mid-September, the English force was trapped, exhausted, and running low on water. But wars are not won by numbers alone. They are won by discipline, terrain, and the choices men make when death stares them down. Edward of Woodstock was born to lead. The eldest son of Edward III, he had been raised in the crucible of war, educated in tactics and chivalry, blooded at Crécy when he was just 16. There he had held the line against overwhelming odds, while his father watched from a hill, refusing to send aid. "Let the boy win his spurs," the king had said, and the boy had. Now, a decade later, Edward commanded men who would follow him into hell. He was charismatic, calculating, and utterly fearless. But even he knew the odds at Poitiers were grim. His men were exhausted. His horses needed water. His baggage train was heavy with loot that slowed every step. Escape seemed impossible. Battle seemed suicidal. On the evening of September 18th, as the French army closed in, Edward offered terms. He would return all captured territory. He would hand over every ounce of plunder taken during the raid. He would swear not to bear arms against France for 7 years. All he asked was safe passage back to Bordeaux. It was an extraordinary concession, a Prince of England begging for mercy from the French king. Cardinal Talleyrand, a papal legate, carried the offer to John's camp. King John II, 47 years old, pious, proud, and increasingly desperate, rejected it outright. He had spent years watching England humiliate his kingdom. He had endured rebellion, betrayal, and the shame of an empty treasury. Now, finally, he had the English cornered. He outnumbered them. He could see their camp from his own lines. To let them walk away would be an act of cowardice, a stain on the honor of France. His commanders debated: surround the English, starve them out, avoid unnecessary bloodshed. But John's mind was made. This was not merely a military decision. This was about honor. This was about proving that France, bleeding, broken but unbowed, could still crush its enemies in open battle. The cardinal returned to the English camp empty-handed. The Black Prince gathered his captains. Sir James Audley, the Earl of Warwick, the Captal de Buch, veterans all knew what came next. They would fight. They would die if necessary. But they would not surrender. Edward ordered his men to dig trenches, reinforce the hedgerow, position archers at the gaps. If the French wanted blood, they would have it, but they would pay dearly for every yard of English ground. That night, both armies slept in full armor, knowing that with dawn would come the reckoning. The night before, battle is always the longest. Men who will be dead by noon write letters they will never send. They sharpen blades already sharp. They pray to saints whose names they barely remember. In the English camp, fires burn low. The baggage train, hundreds of wagons groaning with plunder, wine, and stolen grain, is dragged toward the marshes on the left flank. Some say this is preparation for withdrawal. Others whisper it's a feint, a trick to draw the French into attacking. The truth is simpler. There is nowhere left to run. The Earl of Warwick positions his division near the ford across the river Meosson, but the ground is treacherous, the crossing slow. By first light, they abandon the effort and return to the ridge. The English position is formidable, but only if they can hold it. The ridge rises gently from the south, giving a slight advantage in elevation. Behind it, the forest of Noailles provides cover and prevents encirclement from the rear. To the left, marshland and streams make cavalry charges nearly impossible. To the right, higher ground is reinforced with chained wagons, a barrier of wood and iron that will blunt any flanking maneuver. And directly ahead, running east to west, stretches a hawthorn hedge, ancient, dense, thorned. 2 gaps pierce it, wide enough for 4 horsemen riding abreast, but no more. These gaps become the focal point of the defense. Longbowmen position themselves on either side, their quivers full, their faces grim. The Black Prince divides his force into 3 divisions, arrayed in depth. The vanguard holds the left, anchored near the marshes. The center commands the gaps in the hedge. The reserve waits behind, hidden from view. Most critically, Edward keeps a small mounted force, perhaps 150 knights under the Captal de Buch, concealed on the right flank, out of sight behind the hill. This will be his secret weapon, his ace, the hammer blow that could shatter the French if the moment comes. Across the valley, the French prepare their own assault. King John divides his army into 4 massive divisions, each numbering thousands. The vanguard, led by the Constable Gauthier de Brienne and the Marshals Jean de Clermont and Arnoul d'Audrehem, will strike first, mounted cavalry to test the English archers. Behind them, the Dauphin Charles commands a division of men-at-arms on foot. Then the Duke of Orleans. Finally, the king himself with the largest force will deliver the killing blow. The plan is simple: overwhelm the English through sheer weight of numbers, crush them in waves, leave no survivors. At dawn, the fog lifts, the sun rises, and the killing begins. The first wave comes at 8 in the morning. 300 French knights thunder down the slope, their lances leveled, their banners streaming. The marshals Clermont and Audrehem lead separate charges, one toward the gaps in the hedge, the other toward the English left near the wood. The ground shakes, hooves pound earth, steel glints in the morning sun, and then the longbows speak. The sound is unlike anything else in medieval warfare. A hiss, a rush, a storm of wood and iron descending from the sky. Thousands of arrows darken the air, released in unison by archers who have trained since childhood. The range of the English longbow, 250 yards, more than double that of a crossbow, gives them precious seconds to fire, reload, fire again. The first volley strikes horses. Screaming animals collapse mid-charge, throwing riders into the mud. The second volley finds the gaps in armor. Next joints the vulnerable seams between plate and mail. Knights tumble, lances shatter, the charge falters. At the hedge, Clermont's men reach the gaps and try to force their way through, but the passages are narrow, funneling them into a killing ground where archers fire point blank. Men fall in heaps. Those who survive the arrows meet English men-at-arms waiting with poleaxes and warhammers, weapons designed specifically to crush plate armor. The fighting is savage, intimate, brutal. Clermont himself is struck down and killed. Audrehem is captured. Within minutes, the vanguard breaks. Survivors retreat in disorder, crashing into the 2nd Division advancing behind them. The Dauphin's division now advances on foot, 10,000 men in full armor, marching uphill under a relentless hail of arrows. They reach the hedge exhausted, gasping for breath inside steel shells that weigh 50 pounds. The English surge forward, pushing through the gaps, striking from the flanks. Hand-to-hand combat erupts along the entire line. French knights, trained to fight on horseback, struggle in the mud. English archers abandon their bows and draw daggers, targeting joints and visors. The Dauphin's forces hold for a time, but fatigue and confusion take their toll. They begin to fall back. The Duke of Orléans, seeing the carnage ahead, loses his nerve. His entire division, thousands of men, turns and flees the field without striking a blow. Panic spreads. The French army, so confident at dawn, is unraveling. And still, King John advances. His division, the largest, the most disciplined, marches forward on foot, determined to finish what the others could not. The king himself, clad in full armor, fights in the front ranks. His young son, Philip, only 14, stays by his side. The English line bends, but does not break. And then the Black Prince unleashes his final move. Exhaustion settles over the English line like a physical weight. Archers have spent their arrows. Men-at-arms bleed from a dozen wounds. The Black Prince surveys the field and sees his moment. King John's division is fully committed now, pressing hard against the center, pouring men into the gaps. The French believe they are on the verge of victory. They do not see the trap closing around them. From the right flank, hidden until now behind the rise of the hill, the Captal de Bouc leads his mounted reserve in a sweeping charge. 150 knights, fresh, rested, moving at full gallop, crash into the French rear and flank. It is a thunderbolt. The impact shatters cohesion. French soldiers, already exhausted from the uphill march and the grinding melee, suddenly find themselves attacked from behind. Panic spreads faster than any arrow. Men look over their shoulders and see disaster. The line begins to crumble. At the same moment, the Black Prince orders his own forces to mount and counterattack. Trumpets blare. The English, sensing victory, surge forward with renewed fury. Archers who fought with bows now fight with daggers and hammers, scrambling over the hedgerow and into the French ranks. Gascon men-at-arms strike from the flanks. The carefully organized French divisions dissolve into chaos. Knights who moments before pressed the attack now find themselves surrounded, cut off, fighting for their lives in isolated pockets of resistance. King John II stands at the center of the maelstrom. He does not flee. Even as his army disintegrates around him, even as nobles abandon their banners and run for Poitiers, John fights on. His son Philip remains beside him, wielding a sword despite his youth, shouting warnings. "Father, guard your left. Father, guard your right." The king fights with a battle axe, his royal surcoat torn and bloodied, his crown lost somewhere in the mud. He is a king, and he will not surrender easily. But numbers no longer matter. The momentum has reversed. What was a French assault has become a rout. Thousands flee toward Poitiers, only to find the city gates closed. Gascon cavalry cut them down outside the walls. Others scatter into the countryside, discarding armor, abandoning honor for survival. On the ridge, amidst the bodies and broken weapons, a group of English knights surrounds the French king. Sir Denis de Morbecque, a French-speaking knight in English service, steps forward. King John, battered and alone, removes his gauntlet and hands it to Morbecque. The gesture is unmistakable. He surrenders. The King of France is now a prisoner. By noon, the Battle of Poitiers is over. The field is a graveyard. 3,000 Frenchmen lie dead. Knights, nobles, men-at-arms whose ransoms would have fed villages for years. 2,000 more are captured, including some of the greatest names in France. The Duke of Bourbon, the Count of Eu, 13 counts, 5 viscounts, 100 bannered knights. The English suffer fewer than 100 dead. It is, by any measure, a catastrophe for France and a miracle for England. That evening, the Black Prince hosts a banquet in his pavilion. King John II, still in his battered armor, sits at the table. Edward himself serves the French king, a gesture of chivalric respect that will be sung by troubadours for generations. "You have won great honor this day," Edward tells him, though both men know the words are hollow. John has lost a kingdom. The Black Prince distributes gold and titles to his commanders, enriching loyal followers with the ransoms of captured nobles. It is said that after Poitiers, every woman in England wore a trinket looted from France. France, without its king, descends into chaos. The Dauphin Charles, who fled the field at Poitiers, assumes the regency. He is 18 years old and commands no respect. Nobles refuse to obey. Regions rebel. Paris erupts in violence as merchants and peasants demand reform. The English demand an impossible ransom, 3 million gold écus, more than the entire annual revenue of France. Negotiations drag on for years. King John remains a prisoner in the Tower of London, a symbol of French humiliation. Finally, in 1360, the Treaty of Brétigny is signed. England gains vast territories, Aquitaine, Poitou, Calais, amounting to nearly a third of France. King John is ransomed and released, though he will die in English custody 4 years later, when one of his sons flees and violates the terms of his parole. The Black Prince, meanwhile, becomes a legend. His name is synonymous with victory, with chivalry, with the golden age of English arms, but his health will fail him within a decade. His body broken by dysentery contracted in Spain. He will never see England win the 100 Years' War. That final triumph will not come for another century. Yet on that field near Poitiers, something shifted. An age of French dominance ended. An age of English ascendancy began. And in the mud and blood and broken shields, the destiny of nations was rewritten. One arrow, one charge, one moment of courage and calculation at a time.